It's time for the Brouhaha Sports Show. Brouhaha Sports with award-winning sports writer Dale McKee and co-host Marshall Wood. Talking sports with the legends of the game and famous sports personalities. Brouhaha. Now to Marshall and Dale with tonight's guest.
Welcome to the Brouhaha, everybody. Dale, football for the most part is in the rearview mirror. What are you looking at for the most part over the course of the next few weeks from a football, not a football standpoint? See, I'm already stuck on football, a sports standpoint. What you looking at? What you think's going on? What we're going to be talking about in the weeks to come?
March Madness.
March Madness.
Yes, I don't know. Cinderella. Who's going to be the Cinderella?
Man.
Everybody needs a Cinderella, don't they?
I guess the where are we in the grand scheme of this thing with the March Madness? I guess they're fixing to have the conference tournaments, and then we get through with that. Is that about right with the NCAA basketball?
Yeah, I think they had a few last week. Some of the smaller leagues did, so they've already got some teams probably qualified. But you know, this week they've got like Conference USA, which Southern's in, and they got SEC. You know, and a lot of those Big 12 and Big 10, and all of them have their conference championships this week, and so. I think it's real interesting, especially in the SEC. Not that Ole Miss and State are really, I don't think, are going to be a factor because I think Ole Miss is 13th seed and State's the 10th seed. So but State has a pretty good ball club, but you know you got Auburn and Kentucky and Arkansas.
Auburn's really become a force, haven't they?
Yeah, and you know they're like top 10 the whole year, you know. At one time they were number one for at least a cup of coffee. So, you know, those and Kentucky's always going to be in the mix, you know. So they got to beat four, and they had to win the tournament through this week. And of course, State went over and they lost their first game to Kentucky, which was the number seed, the 7th seed. And the thing that was interesting about that, Kentucky had to win the whole tournament. And they ended up beating South Carolina, who's been number one in all the polls all year, by 2 points in the finals.
South Carolina's a perennial power in women's basketball.
Yes, they are. And they've had a great about 10-year run. And so Ole Miss went over there, and they did beat Florida on opening day. Ole Miss got a double bye because they finished 4th in the conference, which is their highest ranking in probably 30 years. And they went over there and lost, and beat Florida, but then lost to South Carolina. But they played South Carolina pretty well. I think it's like a 10-point loss. Yeah. But they really, in the last few minutes of the game, really picked up their defense, and South Carolina had a tough time against them. But so, you know, there was some, you know, good and bad about that tournament. So, but I'm looking forward to the men's tournament this week. It's going to be in Tampa. Yeah. And the weather is up here and where we live. Yeah. I like to be in Tampa.
You going to Tampa?
No, I said I like to be there. I like to be there.
Well, you know, make it happen, Cap. Well, let me. You know, I'm talking about. I'm not a real up to speed on basketball, probably like I should be. But I think you. I know you're going to correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm asking you to because I may be saying something that's totally incorrect. But just kind of cursory reviews of headlines and stuff, you know, at Duke University, Coach K. Is this his last year?
This is last year.
And that's a big deal, man. He's been at it a long time, and he's been there for a long time.
He's been a GOAT for about 40 years. You know, there's an interesting thing about Coach K. You know, he was an Army assistant coach. And so they had the opening. And he had coached under Bobby Knight. And this is a Mississippi connection to all this. And Ole Miss had a coach at the time named Bob Wetledge.
I remember that name.
Okay. And Wetledge was a Bobby Knight man too. So Duke University went to Bobby Knight. And he gave the name Coach K and Bob Wetledge. And those two were the final two choices, and they went with Coach K. And a couple of years after that, Wetledge left and went to Texas, but he was never heard from again. But Wetledge, he turned the Ole Miss basketball program around when he was there. Yeah. And I don't know if you remember, they won the SEC tournament one year. They beat Georgia. And so that was a big upset at the time.
When was he at Ole Miss?
I would say around 76 to 82, somewhere up in that.
Is that when Sean Tui might have been playing up there?
Oh, he's the one that had all the great players.
Yeah.
He had Carlos Clark and Elston Turner and John Stroud. And,
oh, yeah, I forgot about Stroud. He was a monster, wasn't he?
Tui and
Yeah.
I'm naming you names that went on and played in the NBA a little bit. Stroud played a little bit. Clark played a little bit, and so did. But his philosophy of recruiting was like a lot of people back in those days. You sign you one good player a year. You sign you one really good player a year. And if you sign one a year, you're going to have 4 all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's kind of the way coaches back. They got that Al McGuire book and read it, I guess.
Yeah.
If you remember Al McGuire.
Was he at Marquette?
Yeah, he was at Marquette.
I got a little bit of stuff going on. I got to pat myself on the back.
That was probably, to me, the funnest time of college basketball. Because, you know, then just a few years later, you had Larry Bird, and, it was just one
And
of
the
them.
matchup with Magic and the Spartans in the NCAA tournament. Man, there's been some good ones. And I remember one game I really remember was a Kentucky game against Duke. And I'm trying to think of the guy's name. Christian Leitner hit that turnaround jumper at the game. Remember that game? Was that a good one or what?
Oh, that was.
I didn't like the outcome. I was pulling for the Cats.
Well, I kind of was too, but in that particular game because they were such an underdog. To them. But people don't realize Christian Leitner in that game was 10 for 10 from the floor and 10 for 10 from free throws, and he better be glad he made every one of them.
They needed them all, didn't they?
They needed every one of them because that game went like double overtime. And Kentucky had a bunch of walk-ons on the court playing because they had just come off probation.
Yeah.
So that was one of the greater games.
Yeah. Well, listen, I feel sure we're probably going to be touching a little bit more on basketball tonight. That in mind, tell us what you got for us tonight as a guest, Dale. Who we got and what we're going to be talking about.
Well, Tyler Cleveland with
SB Live.
SB Live. Excuse me.
It's okay. I'm here to help.
That's why you're here. Keep me alive. Well, that's a concept that they've come up with in the last couple of years through ESPN, and Tyler's kind of our chief correspondent for Mississippi high school sports. And he's just going to recap a little bit about the state basketball tournament.
Okay. Well, we're gonna get down to that with Tyler in just a minute. But first, a word from our Brouhaha sponsors. Then Dale and I will be back with tonight's guest, Tyler Cleveland, after the break.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome to the show, Tyler Cleveland. How are you today, Tyler?
I'm doing well. I rested and recovered on Sunday from 6 long days at the Coliseum, but had a lot of time to reflect on everything we saw and really just kind of in awe of every year that they pull this thing off, 36 basketball games in 6 days and crowning 12 champions. It's a long week, but we had some great basketball here in Jackson.
It sure is. Well, listen, let's just start at the bottom and work our way up to the top. But all right, in 1A, Biggersville won both championships, but they had a unique, maybe a historical occasion, didn't they?
They did. I mean, Coach Cliff Little won both. He was coaching both the teams, and that was the first big storyline we got out of the championship round was Cliff Little coaching the Biggersville boys and girls to the championship. And really, they won both of those games going away. I mean, it was I thought all year that they had one of the best teams in boys and girls in 1A, and they showed up and showed out at the championship games, and neither one of them was really close, but what a great story they were, and the following that they brought was unbelievable. Biggersville's like 3.5 hours from Jackson, and I don't know that there was anyone left in that town.
Yeah, now, I remember a couple of years ago in Jackson, they came in football, if you remember that, and they did bring a lot of folks that night, I thought.
Yeah, and then the town is not even big enough to have its own zip code. They
Wow.
took a zip code with the next town. And still, I mean, it was as big a crowd as you saw for any team under 4A or so. It was really impressive.
Right.
Let me ask you a question. I want to interrupt you guys. I apologize for that, but I mean, to me, when I hear that the same school, a 1A school, they win the boys and the girls, and I was going to say, well, how often does that happen? Is that something rare? And I don't want to put the cart ahead of the horse, but didn't that happen again, or during this recent championship drive in another classification?
It did, and not only that, but it was Boonville in 3A. But not only that, the same coach coaches their boys and girls team.
That's crazy.
He's done it. Yeah, he's done it for a long time. He's one of the best coaches in the state. So it wasn't really a surprise when I saw both of them get in. I thought he might do it as well. And you should have seen those teams play. I mean, Boonville's just so well coached, and they're like a well-oiled machine. They have figured out how to play the game without a shot clock. They will wear the defense down for like 90 seconds. And like I'll take the girls for example. Boonville was playing Noxubee County in the championship. Well, the Noxubee County defense played great. They really did, but you can only defend for so long. And so they would just wear them down. Most sessions were between 60 and 90 seconds, and they all ended in buckets.
How about that? And most of them probably layups, huh?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. They would work to get the open shot. They did shoot a couple of threes, but mostly it was layups. And by the time they finally took the shot, they passed up so many just okay looks until they got the shot they wanted every time. And it was a winning recipe for the boys and the girls.
Well, talk to us about 2A for a minute. I've seen Lake, high school, play in different sports over the years, but Pine Grove, tell us about Pine Grove. I'm not real familiar with Pine Grove, and they won the boys championship.
Yeah, the boys were making they were vying for their first championship since like 1977. It was the girls have won it a couple of times from Pine Grove, but the boys had not brought home a championship. But I'm just telling you, and they were some kind of good. They could shoot the lights out of the ball, and it was a clinic they put on shooting wise. That was my big takeaway from Pine Grove boys. They were very well coached as well. So I wasn't really surprised there. Lake was probably the tightest championship game we had until the 6A game the boys game on Saturday night. But it was they played really, really well, and here's a sign of a good team. You know how they won that game? A girl took a charge. They got a 1-point lead with like 16 seconds left, and a girl on the other end took a charge. And it was clean. I mean, I had the video of it. It was a good call. She just stepped in front of it, and it just happened to be Lanisha Palm, who I think she missed in softball last year. She missed the cycle by a single in one of the championship games in softball. So she's a great athlete, and they were very well deserving.
Well, what about in 4A? You had teams very familiar to the Coliseum, Choctaw Central and Raymond, and so tell us a little bit about those championships.
Well, Choctaw Central is such a great story every year, and I actually spent a lot of time during that championship game visiting with the chief of the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians, Cyrus Ben, about their youth sports program, because I'm going to jump the gun a little bit again, and the Neshoba Central was there, the girls were again. And a lot of these players, almost all of them exclusively, come from the Choctaw League that they have, the youth league. Where they get the kids involved in basketball as young as 4 years old, and these girls have all been playing with each other, since they were basically in pull-ups. And it's a great league. They have hundreds of kids in the league. So what you're seeing out there when you see Choctaw Central and Neshoba Central girls play is the best of the best from that youth league. They've been playing together their whole lives. So no surprise there. They're there almost every single year. Raymond, I think, and I want to jump the gun on this, but I'm about to post my final rankings for the year. And I think the Raymond boys are going to be the number 1 seed in the state in my final rankings. I was really impressed with them. Tremaine Dixon and Jabari Robinson, their 2 guards, are the best tandem of guards in the state. And I thought they were the best team from wire to wire this year.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. They started out some really tough competition, but once they got going, there wasn't anybody stopping them. They won probably their last 20 or so ball games. All right, tell us about 5A. You had a unique situation with the 5A girls, and tell us about that, and then tell us about Holmes County.
Well, the girls, Neshoba Central finished 33-0. Just an incredible season, and they played really stiff competition throughout. I mean, they played some really tough opponents, and I think it was about halfway through the season they played a slew of 6A teams that were going to compete for a championship, and they beat them. And once they beat those teams, they realized that they could go undefeated. And then it just came down to counting down it's like, hey, if we can play well the next 3 games, we're going to win a championship and go undefeated. And then it was we can just win 2 games. And then at halftime in the championship game, it was if we can just win this, the last 16 minutes of this one, we can go undefeated. They were counting it down to the last minute. And what a great team they are. I mean, there's no doubt. Carly Keats making the transfer from Choctaw Central to Neshoba Central. She was my player of the game in the championship game. She'll probably be first team All-State. Just an incredible player. Just natural ability is what stands out to me. She doesn't really think when she's playing, and that makes her almost unstoppable.
When is the last time there may have been a girl or any team go undefeated?
2008 was the last year a girls team went undefeated, and I have to dig way back in my memory banks to remember who it was. I want to say it was Gentry. Went undefeated in 2008 in girls basketball. I believe another team did in boys just maybe 2017. But it has been a while since the girls team had gone undefeated, and it was really impressive. And then you talk about Holmes County, a team that I don't know that many people had them picked to repeat as champions, but boy, they erased all doubt in that championship game. They were up 20 at one point, and it was like a and-one basketball game. It was dunk after dunk after dunk. I made a highlight video from the game, and I almost didn't have room for all of them.
How about that? All right, now tell us about the 6A. Now, I heard you had a great boys game, and I'm sure that the girls game was pretty good, too, between Meridian and Harrison Central.
It was, and I'll start with that one. And Dale, the girl from Meridian, Debrisha Poe, who is signed with Mississippi State, is unbelievable. I mean, she is such a good player, so sound fundamentally, if I can get that out. And when the going got tough for them in the fourth quarter and they needed to create separation, she scored the first 8 points of the fourth quarter and then the last 4. That's what it took for Meridian to get over the hump. They had never won. I couldn't believe it. Meridian has never won a girls' championship before. That was a pretty cool moment for them, and it was great to see all the fans from the Queen City. I mean, they showed up and showed out, and they were really having fun at the end of that game. The boys' game, which was in the cap the whole week, and I'll be honest with you, I was kind of delirious by them, but nothing could have really prepared me for that. I mean, Clinton was on the ropes, the defending champs. They were down 15 points going into the fourth quarter. They were down 10 points with 5 minutes left, and somehow won a game where there's no shot clock, which just blew my mind. But at the end of the game, they got every stop they needed. They had a couple of calls go their way, and their big star, Kamani Hamilton, another Mississippi State signee, and Tang Hamilton's son, just went off. I mean, he made every bucket he needed to down the stretch. He drew fouls. He had blocks. It was just an incredible performance, and a really cool story on their coach, Winter Taylor. He started at Clinton as an in-school suspension teacher, and then got on with the coaching staff, coached the 8th grade team, the 9th grade team, was an assistant coach last year, and this was his first year as a head coach.
Wow, that's a great story.
So, yeah, and he's a really good guy too. Really teaches the kids how to play the game the right way, and is not too, he's not showy. He's not one of those rah-rah guys, but his kids play really hard for him, and they were a really fun team to watch this year. and I think we were all kind of stunned in the championship game because the kid from Olive Branch, Landon Jeffries, who is DJ Jeffries' younger brother, later found out, is he just put on an absolute show. He had 20 points against Clinton in the championship, and they really gave the Arrows a run for their money.
Well, Tyler, like I said, you and Dale, I'm the kind of the clock keeper here, and we're kind of getting a little short of time. Listen, you did a really good job of getting us up to speed on what happened up there in Jackson with the state championships in basketball. We appreciate you, Tyler, for taking time and all that you do with us and all that you do for sports in Mississippi. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you guys, and anytime you're up here, y'all just give me a call. We'll go get a sandwich somewhere.
Sounds like a plan.
I got one question for you. What you gonna do now?
Oh, man. Well, yesterday I slept for about 13 hours. But this morning we're back at it. We've got our all-state teams are coming out today and tomorrow. Our final rankings are coming out today and tomorrow. I got to update our all-sports standings for, across all sports for all schools and all classifications. And then we're jumping right into baseball this week. So, the beat goes on, we don't quit until July.
Now, tell us about your website and app and all this so people can come to you. Find out.
Yeah, if you're looking for Mississippi high school sports content, go to www.scorebooklive.com/Mississippi. There you will see the breakdowns we had from all of the state championship games, all 36 of them. There's stories on every game. There's videos from every game. There are photo galleries from all the championship games. And we continue to pump out content, that lists, player rankings. We've got, for baseball, we've got the top 30 juniors, top 30 seniors, top 30 sophomores all up on the site. And we do update rankings every week. So there's always something new going on. We always appreciate it.
Well, Tyler, we appreciate you, and we certainly wish you the best in all of your endeavors and look forward to having you back and maybe talk some little baseball a little later on down the line. But thank you very much. Dale and I are going to take a sponsor break, and then we're going to be back with the final segment before Quick can get ready right after the break. We'll see you then.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome back, everybody, for our final segment of tonight's Brouhaha. Dale, any follow-up comments from tonight's interview with Tyler? I tell you what, I enjoyed that. That was a really concise and thorough simultaneously concise and thorough. That's hard to pull off. He did it.
He did, and he brought us a lot of history in there, and I learned a couple things. I didn't know that the Boonville coach was also won both of his.
How rare is it not only for one school to have a boys and girls champion in basketball, but for two of them in the same year? That could be a first.
Well, I think it's happened before, and it's probably not common. I mean, but what I'm saying, a perfect team, that doesn't
33-0.
That doesn't happen very much, and they scored over 100 points a couple games. Because we were keeping up with them. Because Wayne County's 5A.
Yeah.
But most time, especially the larger schools, they like to have two coaches. You know, because it is, and in playoffs, sometime one of them may be traveling over here. If you got the same coach, I don't see how they work it out.
Yeah.
Like if you're both going to have to play on the same nights.
Yeah.
Back in the old days that you did. Now in the old days, a lot of guys coach both sports.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, football coaches would end up coaching basketball too, I mean, that's just the way it was.
Dale, we talked about the two state championships, two schools winning boys and girls, but, we go back and you look at the Neshoba Central, Choctaw Central thing, and there's two girls champions
in the same neighborhood.
So, I mean, this basketball thing.
Lake's not that far from them, are they?
This stuff can get packed in there pretty tight with all these winning.
It is.
I want to ask you something now. I used to, coming up, my sisters played basketball, and you know, we would go to the big house. This is in the 60s, you know. We'd go up there and watch the tournaments. And back in those days, I think you had like it was, I defer to you, but I mean, there was like a B, a double B, and an A, double A, that kind of stuff. And at the end of the tournaments, they would have where all the winners from each classification would play. Do you remember that?
Yeah, they had overall.
That's the word I was looking for. See, I knew you could.
Well, you know, Waynesboro Central played in that one year.
Is that when Pettis and Smith and that bunch was together?
Yeah,
Coach Jackson?
and we had beat Houston, or Wayne Central had beat Houston in the 3A championship, maybe they called it back at the day, or ever what it was, or A championship. Yeah. And then the next week, Wayne County went up there and played West Lincoln in the semifinals. And West Lincoln ran us off the court. Yeah. They were like a Boonville, you know, and they weren't as talented as us, but they just controlled the tempo of the game and frustrated us all night long. And I think the next year they did away with it because they thought it was too much. Because back then you would have tournaments every weekend. You'd have back in the day there was a sub-district, then the district, and then the South State, and then you had the overall state, and then you had this other champ where you could have played for like 5 or 6 more weeks, you know. Yeah. And so they kind of cut the overall out at the time, and so, you know, I think it would have been unique to see the Shelburne Choctaw Central play, but, you know, they might have played during the season. I don't really know.
Well, if they did, we know who won.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
I remember one time I was up there, this is the late 60s, and Tupelo had won the largest classification, and it was either Puckett or Pelahatchie had won the smallest classification, and those two played. And the small school wore them out. I'll never forget. I remember the uniforms were red, but you know Tupelo back in those days was ruling, you know football and everything back in those days. But I never will forget that little school came up there, man. And I've been from starting out in State Line, Mississippi, down there with some of I watched my older sister play it, and both of them. You know, to see the little guys win, that was really something special.
Yeah, people got to be for the underdog.
Yeah, I always got to be for the underdog.
They said the other day in that SEC women's tournament, Ole Miss was playing South Carolina, and the last 2 or 3 minutes, the whole crowd just about over there was for Ole Miss because they were the underdogs.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. You an underdog? You a big underdog fan?
I am.
Yeah. I like the underdogs too.
I like winners too.
Yeah.
I like following winners.
Well, let's see what time it is here. Let's see. You know, Dale, you asked. We kind of a little behind the scenes kind of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. We're sitting here fixing to, get things going. You said, what we're going to talk about? Well, we had plenty to talk about. And I've got a whole bunch of stuff over here written by some guy that comes in the mail to me. You wrote this.
I did?
Yeah, the sideline view.
I don't really remember my handwriting being quite like that.
Well, I have a conversion app that just takes less than satisfactory handwriting and makes something pretty.
You translate it.
Translate it. Yeah, that's an interesting word. Mm-hmm. So you writers can come up with all kinds of stuff. Translate.
We just throw words in there that y'all don't know. We really don't know them either. We probably don't know them either.
Well, anyway, Dale, our time is come and gone, but the good Lord willing, Dale and I are going to be back next week with another guest for more of the Brouhaha. Remember to follow us on Facebook at the Brouhaha and on our YouTube channel, you guessed it, the Brouhaha. But for now, it's time to say goodbye, Dale.
Goodbye, Dale.
And we'll see you next week for more of the Brouhaha. Take us out of here, Jamie.
You've been listening to the Brouhaha with Dale McKee and Marshall Wood. Heard Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. on WABO. For more of the Brouhaha, follow us during the week on Facebook and WABO.